I turned it so the light's in the background. I did that on purpose. I did it on purpose because nothing shines the glaring light of internet hatred on you quite as fast as grading teams. Coming up with final grades. Not easy. So I wore my Detroit jersey, which looks nice and silvery, with my Detroit hat, which is not silvery. It doesn't quite match, but it's close enough. Because obviously Detroit didn't get a good grade. And I factored in some stuff. So I'm going to try to explain my letter grade. They don't actually pass or fail based on my grade. Pretty sure none of the NHL teams mentioned pass or fail based on my grade. Pretty sure they're not watching. Pretty sure they wouldn't care. But it's fun to speculate. And it's fun to look and say, all right, well, this team's played really well, this team hasn't, that kind of thing. Anaheim, I give them a B. They would have had an A, but there were some inconsistent parts to the season. They've picked it up lately. They've been very good. They get a B. Arizona, C-. Arizona would get a lower letter grade, but there's a lot of rookies. There's a lot of young kids. And I can't fail them due to the play of their young kids. And there's injuries and things of that nature, so I can't fail them. But I can't give them a really good grade either because they've been abysmal for a lot of the season too. So C- works. Boston, I give a B-. They would have had a much lower grade. And I thought about grading them based on coaches, but I'll just give them an overall grade of B-. It could have been worse. Arguably could have been better. But B- works. So hopefully they don't mind that. If you're a Boston Bruins player and you're hearing, it's nothing personal. Buffalo, I give a C. And it's hard for me to grade Buffalo because yes, Eichel was hurt. Yes, they've played with walking wounded a lot of the season, and they're young, and there's a lot of pieces that if it all comes together next year, they're in the playoffs. But I'll give them a C for this year. Calgary, I give a B. It would have been an A, but they did have the goaltending that was bad for a stretch, and they went through the issues with Gaudreau and Monahan, and there's been some stuff that's interfered with that A. Carolina, I give a B-. It would have been a C-, but man, that run they went on, that 17-game run there, pretty damn impressive. And though it ended on a down note for Carolina, I give them full credit and a B- for them. Chicago gets an A. I didn't go with any A+, and A's as high as I went. Chicago has, again, proven their critics wrong in the regular season. I kept hearing about, oh, Chicago's going to fall apart. This isn't their year. They're not going to do it again. And they did. Colorado, I give a D. Joe Sakic, I give an F. Fail. Flunk. And it sucks because Joe Sakic was one of my favorite players. And Sakic was a Warriors player, but I just don't know that he's the GM to get Colorado out of this mess because he's helped get them into it. So, yeah, I can't see how you can't give Colorado a D/F this year. Columbus gets an A, obviously. Tortorella, and just the fact that they got off to a good start and they've rode it this far. Some deft drafting and some really smart plays. Picking up Gagne was a smart play. They've just put together a really solid roster in Columbus, and I'm really impressed with it. Dallas, D. F for Jim Nill. So again, your GM gets an F, your team gets a D, which is ironic because that's the one thing Dallas is lacking right now is that D and the goaltending. It's just not there. Detroit, I gave a C-. Too many guys had iffy seasons when they needed some guys to step forward, and Zetterberg is still being relied on far too much. Sort of reminds me of the Sedins in Vancouver. He's being relied on far too much. He should be getting phased out, and instead he's had a fantastic season because he is Detroit's #1 threat, and it's not even close. Edmonton gets an A. They're back in the playoffs. They're full value. They're fantastic this year. And yeah, I give them an A. And Chiarelli gets an A from me too. Florida, C minus. I really honestly think if Gerard Gallant had been left in his coaching position, I think we're talking about something different here. I think Florida, at the very least, is where Tampa and the Islanders are right now. I think Florida's in the mix if Gerard Gallant had been kept around as coach. They had a knee-jerk reaction, and now they're paying the price for it. The Kings, C minus. They made moves at the deadline that made them worse somehow. And I thought picking up Iginla and Bishop, I thought they were both smart moves. I was wrong. The Kings were wrong, hence the C minus. Minnesota, B plus. It would have been an A, but man, this last month and a half, it's been tough. And it's hard to give them an A when they've had this last month and a half as bad as it's been. Montreal, B plus. Very good season for Montreal. I have some issues with some of their team going into the playoffs. I don't know that the scoring depth is where it needs to be for them to go very far in the playoffs, but we'll see. They certainly have a path out of their division if they can play well. Nashville, C plus. They just can't seem to get over the hump, and I don't like how this season's turned out for them. They're in the playoffs, but I don't know how long they're going to last. They just can't seem to get over that hump. New Jersey, D. You had to fix your forwards, and you didn't. Taylor Hall was a nice addition. He didn't set the world on fire. His goal totals didn't go through the roof like I suggested they might. His point totals didn't go through the roof as I suggested they might. And I was wrong about that. That trade, in my eyes, is all Edmonton's way. Larson's been fantastic. Larson's been really, really good for Edmonton. Islanders, they were a D under Jack Capuano. They've been a B under Doug Weight. A couple of hiccups with Doug Weight, but in general, a very good team. And as long as they keep Weight around, I think the Islanders are going to be in the mix next year. Rangers, B. All the right moves. Again, these guys were predicted to fall too. A lot of people were predicting Rangers are going to fall apart. Their D isn't good enough. Lundqvist's getting older. Nope. They don't even need Lundqvist. Ronta's been fantastic when Lundqvist was out. And it's an impressive crew in New York. I like Shea a lot, as an example. I like JT Miller a lot, Chris Kreider. There's a lot of good young talent in New York. I don't think the Rangers are falling out of the mix anytime soon. Ottawa, I give an A minus. And the minus really is for the faltering that's happened lately. But in terms of Condon keeping them in that race, yeah, it's an A minus. The picking up Condon was a stroke of genius. Philly, C. It's hard to grade them below that because they did have a lot of young players and a lot of guys who are gaining experience now. Provorov comes to mind. Ghost Spear is still young, very young, and that gets forgotten this year because he had such a fantastic rookie season. He can bounce back next year, and I think he will. Pittsburgh, A. How can you not give them an A considering what they've been through, all the injuries they've been through, and they're still number 2 in the East? It's insane. Number 2 in points. They're ahead of Montreal in points. St. Louis, B. Again, goaltending drops them down. Probably a letter grade. It probably would have been an A if they'd had the goaltending all year because they'd be right up there with Chicago. San Jose, C+. Any team that loses in the Stanley Cup Final is going to have the bit of what you call the Stanley Cup hangover. And that's happened with San Jose. But they played better at the start of the year than they're playing now. There's a lot of holes in that game that have been getting exposed lately by a lot of teams. So I can't rightfully give San Jose a great grade considering they were in the Stanley Cup Final last year and this year. I don't know if they get out of the first round. Tampa, C+. And this grade is tough. And I know I just posted a video about how Tampa's in the hunt. They look great. But the Bishop thing held on too long. I don't know if trading Brian Boyle was smart or not. He's not setting the world on fire in Toronto, but I think Tampa selling at the deadline tells me that maybe Yzerman underestimated his own team. So just as in terms of what the team's accomplished this year and everything that's been going on, to give them a C plus. Not a failing grade, and definitely a good grade, but next year I expect an A out of them. Toronto, A. How can you not give the Toronto Maple Leafs an A on their season right now? Vancouver, D. A D that I expected. A D that a lot of Canuck fans at the start of the year told me I shouldn't expect. I'm not a real fan. How dare I say the Canucks 4-game winning streak was a sham, and I did. And I argued this is not how you win hockey games. This isn't something they can sustain. You can't win games in shootouts and overtime, and you can't rely on coming from behind constantly. And I was right. And I wasn't happy about being right, but I was right. So a D for them. Washington's an A. They're the President's Trophy winners. You can't give them anything but an A. Winnipeg, B minus. Winnipeg would have been higher if they had fixed their goaltending early in the season. They didn't, and so I give Winnipeg a B minus. They've played really, really well since they were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, which means tanking isn't in the vocabulary, and I think they're going to do much better next year. I do. I think Winnipeg's going to be back in the playoffs next year. All right, those are my 30 letter grades. I don't have a letter grade for Vegas. If I did, it would be an I, incomplete, because they've signed one player, and we don't know what they're going to put out on the ice yet, but it's going to be fun to speculate during the playoffs, isn't it? All right, so those are my grades. You guys can go ahead and give me yours. Tell me what you think's wrong with mine. That seems to be a popular topic when I do this kind of thing. But at any rate, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. Again, this shining light, that could be you, shining light on my ignorance or on my wondrous, fantastic, generous nature and my recognition of talent. No, not really. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all again soon.